Hello everybody, so today's video is going to be actually about the NIRS Toolbox, or now it's called the Brain AnalyzIr with this IR for both infrared and the phonetic ending. This video will be actually about loading data into NIRS Toolbox. So because this is an object-oriented toolbox, it doesn't behave as what most scientists will be familiar with. So it's instead of calling specific functions, you actually create objects. So in many cases, you'll have a data object. Within that there will be many different pieces to it, but it does also house typical function calls as well. So in loading data, it has several. The function itself is called loadDirectory, and you'll find it in the plus NIRS folder under the plus IO folder. In calling the function, you'll basically have a variable name. Often it's called raw or data or something along those lines. And you'll have NIRS, which indicates the folder, .io indicating the subfolder, and the function, which will be loadDirectory. The function itself is requesting for several input variables. One is root folder, next one is folder hierarchy, then load function, and then file extension. The root folder is basically going to be the file path, so you do have to designate the file path. The folder hierarchy is actually going to be how did you order your actual folders? Is it group first followed by subfolders of subjects, or is it some other names? The load function will actually, there are a few functions within this load directory that it has the will to call. So you can actually select a specific one or call all of them. It doesn't matter. And then also a file extension, which actually will match the load function input variable. So root folder, it's going to specifically ask for a file path. In that file path, you have to ensure there are no spaces, just as with any call in MATLAB. You also have the option of where to end your file path. You can essentially, if you have a file or folder of groups, or of group one essentially, and then within that there's several subjects, if you end at the group level, it will load all the data for all the subjects. Or you can actually go specifically to the subject and it will only load that subject and sessions within that subject. Or you could also go within the session folder and it will only load that session. The total number of data sets, it will load all of the ones that reside within the file path that you selected. So the more specific, the fewer data sets you'll load. The folder hierarchy is actually user designated. So the default here is going to be group followed by subject. So this is basically stating that all of your subject folders fall within a group folder. And there's multiple group folders and something like that. So as an example, group 1 will be your main folder. Within that will be all of your subjects, 1, 2, 3, all the way through. Next will be a load function input variable. Basically, it's going to, there's 4 different functions that it can call. It's either going to be a load.NIRS, load oxy3, load NIRX, and load Hitachi. These are specific to different types of systems because there's different types of data formats. If you call a specific one, it will only look for that. It will only use that function, only look for that specific file format. If you don't call any of them, it will actually utilize all of them and look for any file format that happens to reside in your folder. You can also call multiples, so if you have different types of files within that as well. Next, the file extension, that will actually match the load function. So you see here the .NIRS will be your file extension. It matches the load.NIRS. Oxy3 matches the load oxy3. WL1 matches the load NIRX. And this probe asterisk CSV matches the Hitachi. But be careful if you do have something like, say, a .NIRS and a raw file, and you don't call it or you call multiples, it will actually load both data sets. So then you'll actually have some redundancy. Finally is going to be an example of an actual function call. So now you know kind of the insight of what these all are, but in order to implement it, I want to show you what that actually looks like. So this would be 2 lines of code. The first, I'm designating a file path, which this UI get directory is a built-in MATLAB function. It's going to take my working directory, so the current directory, pop up a pop up and allow me to click and point and click to find my actual folder path. It saves me from having to hard code it and allows a little bit of malleability in that sense. Save it under root directory. And then here I'm going to call the NIRS.io.loadDirectory function. I'm going to save it as a raw variable. You can save it as whatever you want to call it. However, raw is seemingly appropriate because it's raw data. I put in my file path, which I selected here. I then designate my folder hierarchy, which is going to be group followed by subject. I then input my load function, which is I designated as load.NIRS, so I actually specified it, and then my file extension, which is .NIRS. Again, all of these you can alter to however you want to load it, but you do have a select amount of options in what to choose. Remember, the group subject will actually be used just in your demographics. This will actually be loading only .NIRS files, and of course I will be looking for .NIRS files within this file folder. Anyway, this should get you at least started. It gets your data uploaded into NIRS Toolbox. From there, you'll have all sorts of fun with all the different options you have, and I'll try to post up more videos on that in the near future.